Hello, my friends. You are watching the SMC Journal podcast. This is a show where it's all about performance in IT today, whether that's software, hardware testing, tuning, monitoring, what have you. I'm Scott Moore, and I am glad that you joined me for this show today. Are you embracing DevOps fully? Are you still struggling with moving from monitoring to observability? You want to reduce toil in your organization and you need to have some automation for all of this stuff, but you kind of lost at doing that. That's kind of the subject that we're going to be talking about today. It's about how automation and observability really impact the DevOps performance, like how you're actually getting DevOps done and the results that you're seeing from that. We're going to talk a lot about quality gates and how all that stuff works. And I've got a special guest in order to do that. Before we really get started, let's talk about the sponsors that make this show happen. This episode is sponsored by Micro Focus and the LoadRunner Solutions family. That includes LoadRunner Professional, Enterprise, Cloud, and Developer. You know, performance matters. Did you know that LoadRunner Solutions have the largest community of practitioners in the world? Join that community at community.microfocus.com, scan the QR code, and check out the LoadRunner family page on performance engineering, as well as their YouTube playlist that we've got links for in the show notes on smcjournal.com as well as YouTube. This episode is sponsored by Supervisor. Stop losing money with a slow website. With Supervisor, you can continuously track the performance of your code and your hosting. Predict site page load speed with high user volumes and an easy one-click load test solution. Find out more at supervisor.com. This podcast is sponsored by Bright Payment Solutions. They provide merchant services for a wide variety of credit card companies. They take most major credit cards at the lowest rates and fees possible, and they can help your business generate higher revenue through a variety of payment solutions they have, including their own point-of-sale equipment and custom software. If you take credit cards for your business, you should contact them and see how they can help you. Go to brighteps.com and tell them Scott Moore from the SMC Journal sent you. Thank you, sponsors, for making this podcast happen, as well as supporting the overall performance testing and engineering community. So let's get into it. How does automation and observability really help impact the bottom line for DevOps shops? I've got a guest on today from Oracy Software. His name is Alex Darby. He's the director of APM services there. I'd like to bring him on and let's actually have a conversation about it, shall we? Hey, Alex, how are you doing? Welcome to the SMC Journal podcast.
Hey, Scott. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here.
So, Alex, why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Yeah, so my name's Alex Darby. I am the APM Services Director at Oracy. I've been certified in multiple different APM tools since 2015. And before that, I was a performance tester, performance testing with Performance Center and LoadRunner.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk about observability and how that plays a vital role in today's DevOps strategy. So what's your background with observability?
Well, with observability, you know, a lot of people talk about observability along with monitoring. Those are two different things, but they're basically the same thing, and that is getting visualization into your application that you're either coding for or that you're monitoring from an ops position, right? Is to be able to see what is that performance like all the way down to the code level. So, you know, getting certified in different APM tools gives me that experience to be able to understand what the observability tools are, how they work, and the information you can get out of them to make your life a lot easier when you're trying to troubleshoot issues that you see in a performance testing environment or in a prod environment.
So it's not just really about observability, it's about automation as well. How do those two play together?
Well, observability, you know, like I said, you know, a lot of people talk about monitoring with observability, but they are different, right? So observability is kind of where the automation comes in. And what I mean by that is that an observability tool is able to see what's going on for a baseline for your in your environment from every different data point that comes in from the observability tool, and it can automatically decipher anomalies that are happening. You don't have to go in there and tell it, okay, well, if the CPU spikes for 3 minutes at 100%, then I need for you to, violate, right? It knows that by understanding what's gone on in the past and says, okay, well, this is abnormal. This CPU utilization is abnormal, or this this service that's related to this transaction is higher than what it usually is. So being able to do that and then automatically get problems that open up inside is really where the automation comes in, or it's an automatic thing that happens that you don't have to go and tell it and say, hey, make sure you open up a problem if this happens. It just automatically does it for you. It's smart enough to know the anomaly.
Okay. So that's what Orsi's calling the intelligent DevOps strategy. And so
Yes.
what about companies that are already doing some observability, but they're also emphasizing CI/CD pipelines, continuous integration and continuous deployments? And how does that work with shifting left, and how can that positively impact your SDLC?
Yeah, so I know, Scott, you talk a lot about shifting left on your show, and it's one of the things that people, especially today, in the recent few years, a lot of folks like to talk about, and that's instead of waiting until right before you're going to release it into prod, let's test this thing as close as we can to the actual development of the application. So that shifting left is getting closer and closer to the developing of the application and be able to test it all the way into the development environment, right? And as it moves up through the different environments, being able to test it at each level. And you can use a CI/CD streamline testing to make sure that you're getting a good quality out of your application, and you're hitting what's called a quality gate. So you can use a quality gate to be able to push it from one to the next automatically as it moves through all the way from dev to prod.
Keeping in context what we talked about in the first question, though, CI/CD pipelines, shifting performance left, can you really do that without having observability in that development environment as well, and automating there as well?
Not really. I mean, you can, but it's definitely not it's definitely not best practice, right? So best practice is to ensure that you have a good observability tool that we discussed in the first question to be able to find these problems for you automatically, and then be able to utilize that coming together with your performance test and integrating a performance test into an APM tool where that way it's consuming your data that you're running in the scenario, and then be able to say, okay, this is good, this is not. If it's good, then let's move it to that next environment, right? Let's move it from performance to staging, or from performance to prod, whatever it is that you want to do, or from development into performance. So no matter where it is that you want to use it, starting at the closest to the development environment that you can is where you want to use it to be able to use these quality gates.
I see. And so the earlier you find it, obviously, the cheaper it is to fix the problem as well.
So you're not wasting as much time trying to fix it late in the development cycle rather than early in the development cycle, and making things just happen faster. So all of this is related around trying to increase the overall efficiency of getting new development code to prod faster, and using quality gates is a good way to do that.
You know, it's interesting that these days we don't hear as much about the word performance as we do now efficiency and resiliency. Like site reliability, and I equate reliability with resiliency as well. So we're hearing more about reliability and that efficiency. I think it's because of the cloud, right? As we move to the cloud, you can be performant, but it may be very expensive. And unless you're also efficient with it, you're going to spend a lot of money trying to compete or keep your apps running where your users are happier. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. So you want to ensure that you are being as efficient as possible. And a lot of that comes to doing new things, maybe things that your corporation hasn't done previously, and maybe having a paradigm shift on the overall culture, moving away from, everybody kind of being siloed off into that full DevOps strategy, ensuring that you can do those types of things in a more efficient way. We talked about quality gates, and what that means is that you want to automate everything, right? You want to automate your APM, you want to automate your performance, you want to automate your delivery, your software delivery process, and then automate your remediation. Those four things is really what turns a traditional, let's do the release, let's do the test, let's pick a date to do the release at 3 o'clock in the morning, right? And then see it and make sure that it works, into let's push the button on the pipeline and then everything just happens. And you're able to do that by integrating all those things together through the quality gate process and becoming more of an autonomous type organization. So what does that mean by when you say, well, how do you automate an APM tool? How do you automate performance? So I know that you've talked about it in the past about being able to put a performance test into a CI/CD pipeline, whether it's LoadRunner or NeoLoad or whatever tool that you're using, being able to put that into a pipeline and then integrating it with your APM tool. So your APM tool is seeing that data and then giving you a response on, let's say it doesn't pass the test, right? Well, why didn't it pass the test? So being able to look at your APM tool, it will tell you, it'll say this service was slow because of this, right? All the way down to the code level. Maybe it was error rates that increased, tenfold. What was the error? What was the stack trace of the error, right? So being able to get that information quickly on why it failed, fix it, and then push the button again on the pipeline and let it run. And then we get to the point to where we're at the software delivery process point, right? So that pushes from one environment to the next, and you can use tools like Harness or Captain to be able to say, okay, we're looking at this application under test, it's passed, now let's push it. So let's say you're using a microservices environment, right? And you're just going from one namespace to the next. Well, you can get these tools to say, we're going to push it from pre-prod to prod. And we're going to be able to do that through using these tools to get it into prod automatically, as long as it passes that test. So what does it mean by passing a test? So you can actually put in SLOs that are related to your SLIs, service level objectives, to be able to say, okay, we need this process or we need this service to be able to hit this mark for performance and for error rate, for latency, availability, those kinds of things. And if it hits that, then that gate opens, right? That quality gate then opens, and then you're able to push it to the next one automatically without having to say, okay, it passed. Now let's wait, 24 hours or whatever the case might be to actually get into prod. If it's good to go, let's just push it, right? And then those tools can help do an additional test to make sure functionality is there and that it pushed from one environment to the next safely, efficiently, everything's working properly, and you're good to go.
I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say the last part, number 4, was going to be automating remediation or self-healing. So a lot of people, I think that's one of the biggest fears that I've run across, especially as it relates to APM tools, because they do that very efficiently, but not very many people take advantage of that. So for example, if you see errors that are happening, and when this error happens, this service becomes unavailable, or it spins, or it times out, or whatever the case might be, and the only way to fix that is through restarting the service. Well, instead of waiting for the error to happen and then opening up a ticket and then a person going, what server is it? What service was it? Which one do I need to restart? So all that takes time, and time is money, right? So if you know the fix, remediate it, put it into something like Ansible or something like that. So when a performance tool sees that this is happening, it automatically restarts it within just a minute or so, just long enough for it to realize what's going on, restarts it, and then you don't have to worry about it taking time and a service being down for more than maybe a minute or two as the process takes place for discovery and remediation. So those are really the 4 things, getting to an autonomous type situation for your organization, and being able to move through the SDLC process very quickly in an automated fashion.
So you know what, Alex, I'm all for everything that you just said, for self-healing, for automation of everything, and really reducing as much toil as you can. I mean, that's the SRE's job, is to help to reduce the toil in any organization. However, absolutely, what you just described creates a question of trust in the automation and a question of trust in the analysis. Do you feel like there's still room for some sort of manual validation or verification at some point through these quality gates, where somebody has to say, hold on a second, this looks like it might be a good idea to do, but let's check this again, because for example, just because something is faster from one build to the next doesn't necessarily mean that it's better. It could be something that was left out, and there's a reason why it's faster that's not good. Somebody would have to manually verify that. So do you agree with that? And where would those places be?
I agree. So, it's all about confidence, right? Your corporation having confidence in the release itself and the process of a quality gate or becoming an autonomous organization. So the more you do it, and the smarter that you make the SLOs, the smarter that you make the APM tool to be able to see what's right, what's wrong. If this particular thing is wrong, then don't release it, right? Mm-hmm. So it will stop the release if something is incorrect. So you can make that as stringent as you want to make it, and especially in the beginning when you're learning how to do it and you're trying to say, is this going to work? Is this really what we want to do? I don't want to be the one that pushed the button and then everything went through and then it broke, right? So nobody wants that. So I think as you build confidence and you kind of see when something fails and then you fix it and then it goes through and then it passes and things work, you start to build that confidence in what you're creating with the autonomous cloud, for lack of a better word. So autonomous cloud, moving from microservices on-premise into a cloud if you're using AWS or Azure, things of that nature. But it's always good to trust but verify, as they say, right? So, making sure that you feel good about it going. You can make it to where it passes, but maybe for the first few times it doesn't automatically go until you feel like that you've checked it manually and say, is this good? Because, I mean, we're all performance testers, right? We've got to test it. Let's test it. Let's test it. Let's test it. Right? We've got to make sure it works before we just blindly throw, especially when you're talking about production, before we just blindly throw this thing in there and say, well, we're just going to run everything automatically for us. Because there is a level of effort in the beginning to get that to that point, right? It's not something that just happens quickly. It's something that takes a little bit of time to make happen. When you're involved in it from the beginning, then you can see what the process is, and then that's another way to be able to gain confidence in that process.
Yeah, as a performance engineer for many years, I have this healthy paranoia that kicks in whenever somebody says we're gonna. And I think the better performance engineers will be the better rule builders now from this point forward. As you automate this, the better rule sets and verifications that you can create, that confidence will build over time. But it's probably not something right out of the gate you're going to get, but it's something that you're going to build over time. So that's great. Can you share some tips with the audience on how to make sure that observability improves their software and quality and performance?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the biggest things is to, first of all, make sure that you're using a tool that provides you observability, right? So the things that we talked about before, for it to be able to automatically find the issues for you, right? So that way you're not having to do that manual lift yourself to tell it what a problem is. So that's the first thing. The next thing is what we touched on a little bit before, and that is to take time to automate the process. So like I said, it is a bit of a heavy lift, but the good news is that it's repeatable, right? It's like writing that script in Vusion, and the hard part is writing the script, right? But you test it again and again and again. So once you've got it written, then you can just tune it the way that you want to. So same thing with this process. It's a heavy lift in the beginning to get it going, but then it's repeatable, and you can just change what you want to test, how you want to test it, what are going to be those SLOs, what's going to be that high watermark for it to say, yes, it can pass the quality gate and go through to the next environment. And then probably next is that whole paradigm shift around using that observability mindset, let the tools do the work for you, right? There's a reason why all this automation is being built. It's to help you be able to do your job more efficiently. So you can spend more time innovating and pushing the envelope rather than trying to fix things that you thought were good to go 6 months ago, right? So just getting into that whole DevOps process, CI/CD pipeline, and being able to move from maybe more the traditional way to do it into a new way, because it's not just the different tools that you do, but it's also kind of a cultural shift, moving into more of a DevOps a 2-week sprint kind of formulation. And if you're not used to doing that and your company is not used to doing that, it takes a little bit of time to get people used to doing it. But once you're there and you're going, innovation will just skyrocket for sure.
That's great. Put you on the spot here, Alex. Can you tell me have you had any examples that pop into the top of your head where you've been working in Orsi and you've seen this sort of stuff work without having to mention any company names or anything, where you've actually seen this big transformation happen and the success of it?
Yeah, I have. I've dealt with directly with just one, but I know that other folks at our company have dealt with many that move from a more traditional type, monolithic type testing, waterfall type testing, into more of a DevOps type situation. So and that's one of the reasons why I brought it what I brought up, because usually there's a little bit of resistance to making that change when you're not used to it. But you know, embrace change. You know, we're all in IT here, and change is going to happen. When once you make that change, it will definitely make a big impact on everything around you and how you're innovating for the application that you're creating. So it definitely moves people from a more traditional way to a more advanced way of doing things, and puts you into that whole. And everybody talks about the cloud. As more and more people move to the cloud, that's kind of what they're talking about. You know, moving into a more microservice Kubernetes type situation, and then this is kind of that next step, moving into an autonomous cloud type thing. And companies that are doing this are seeing huge advances in doing that. So it's
And
definitely
is the biggest impact that you're seeing from this, is it speed to delivery? Is it better test coverage? Is it better performance? Is it fewer defects? Is it making more money?
it's us really all of those things, right? It's being able to ensure that you're getting code, higher quality code, more confident codes to production faster, right? So you're blending those developments operation teams together to be able to say, hey, operations, we're going to give you code that we know that's going to work, right? Because we've tested it properly. We're not going to have any surprises. We know exactly what's going to go in. We've been testing it since the beginning. And then, of course, like, you know, time is money, right? So the faster you can get it to prod with fewer defects, the better, right? Not as many rollbacks, not having to go back and, okay, roll it back to the previous one and let's fix it and let's try it again in, you know, 2 weeks or whatever the case might be, which then equates to money. And then also it becoming faster, right? So the faster you can deliver higher quality code, the faster with generational code it's going to get, right? The more you can tune it and then be able to test that quickly, get into prod quickly by testing it by service, and knowing that service is going to be faster, better, more efficient than it was, which is the better. At the end of the day, it's all about your end user. You know, is the end user having a positive experience with your application, and the more positive experience they have, the happier they are, which should lead to also more money for the business as a whole. So,
Always gets back to the end user experience, doesn't it? Um,
absolutely,
So if people
absolutely.
want to know more about what we've been talking about, there's actually an ebook that Oracy offers about embracing observability and automation as part of an intelligent DevOps strategy. And I'm going to put a link on our show to that, a download for that ebook. And this is what the page looks like. Can you talk to that, Alex, to talk about what people would be getting if they download this?
Yeah. So this particular document, it's a very good read. It's a very quick read. Should not take you more than 5 or 6 minutes to read it. It goes over in a high level what we discussed as it relates to quality gates and DevOps and using a CI/CD pipeline, and automation. So it kind of bottles it up in a nice little package for you to be able to read and digest quickly. So it's a really good read.
Awesome. We'll make sure to share that. Alex, thanks so much for being on the show, and you're welcome anytime. And thanks to Oracy for sponsoring the SMC Journal as well.
We appreciate it. Thank you, Scott.
All right. So we appreciate Alex being on the show today. I'm glad that you were able to be with us. I'd like to know your thoughts about this. You agree, disagree with anything that Alex said? I'm really easy to find. If you want to contact me, you can reach me at my website, scottmoore.consulting. There is a URL for my LinkedIn profile where I'm very active, and I do use that feedback that I get from these places like LinkedIn and Twitter to formulate new shows. You can also reach me through email at help@scottmoore.consulting. Be happy to listen to your suggestions on what content we should have, who we should interview, and what you'd like to hear me maybe answer some of your questions. And that's probably going to be our next episode, is answering some specific questions from people who have contacted me. So if you like this kind of content and you want to hear about when new shows come out, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Ring the bell so that you will know whenever new shows come out. They're generally right now in 2022 Tuesdays and Thursdays at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thanks again for being with us, and I hope to hear from you soon. Until then, this is Scott Moore for the SMC Journal saying thank you and bye-bye.